Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School podcast. I am your host, Chris Pope. We're bringing you an interview today with a wildlife control operator that is fairly new to the business, but is having good success and looking to grow and expand. And so I hope this is something that's going to give you a little bit of insight and maybe give you a few things to pick up from. I definitely took a few notes and picked up some things that I will be trying to use in my business. So before we get started, we got to thank our sponsors, Koch Bros Lures. Trapping season, is crazy as it is, the year's halfway gone and trapping season's right around the corner. Don't wait till the last minute like I usually do to order your trapping supplies. Look through. I'm looking. I know I need some more bait. I think I'm pretty well set on lure, but I definitely need some more bait, some red label and gold label. Yeah, red. Well, I don't have any to look at because I used it all, but definitely some gold label, and I'm pretty sure some red label. Koch Bros bait, whatever you're going to use, whether you're using wax and dye, ever how you treat your traps, get them things ready. Now's the time. Get them ready. Be ready well and ahead of time for trapping season. That's my plan, so I'm going to hit up Koch Bros and make sure they get my shipment out in plenty of time. Be sure to sign up for their email list or their newsletter. They have regular, usually monthly, different specials on things, so that's a great thing to take advantage of. So support Koch Bros for supporting us, and thank them if you talk to Kyle or Kellen. Be sure to tell them where you heard about them, and thank them for supporting the Coyote Trapping School podcast. Now we're fixing to get into the interview. So today's interview was with Frank Cisa. He owns and operates Wildman Wildlife Removal and Exclusion in North Carolina. And he's been running for a couple years now, and he reached out to me after listening to some of my episodes. He reached out specifically about the pricing podcast, and so we got to talk, and I said, man, I'd love to talk with you a little bit online, and maybe we'll see what folks can get out of it. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. I hope you enjoy the episode. Frank's a very personable guy, and I can see why he would be successful. He's just real easy to talk to and down to earth, and knows his stuff. So Frank, he leaves his contact information at the end. Look him up, follow him on Instagram, and there's one more thing that I was going to say, and I can't remember what it is now, but anyway, here's the podcast with Frank. All right, so today we're with Frank Cisa with Wildman Wildlife Removal and Exclusion in Durham, North Carolina. So, Frank, glad to have you. Give us a little bit of background about how long you've been in business, how you got started in business, and then we'll go from there.
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. Yeah, so I started my own business about halfway through 2017. And when I say I started my own business, I essentially I started an LLC. I filed an LLC because people told me to file an LLC. And then I just kind of put some magnets on my truck and waited for people to call me. I wasn't really sure the best way to start actually generating calls, but been a wildlife guy since I was a kid. You know, my dad kind of gave me a love for wildlife. He wasn't really a hunter or a trapper, but he just loved nature and taught me to like wild things. So I went to college, studied wildlife biology and natural resources at Clemson University. Got out. I started working I took a course in college called Wildlife Damage Management, I think my senior year. And that was taught by some of the guys from the USDA Wildlife Services,
Yep.
that and I just thought they had the coolest job in the world. I mean, we got to help them. I didn't get to do any shooting, but we got to go in these nice neighborhoods up around Clemson and help them drag out deer that they were shooting at night with silencers and stuff. And I was like, man, that's exactly what I want to do. I want to solve conflicts between people and wildlife. And so I started working for a large pest control company in South Carolina, and I was really running a commercial route, doing bugs and all that kind of stuff for the most part. But then I got to do a little bit of wildlife work. I wouldn't really say that they didn't really know what they were doing. I don't think they just kind of knew that their customers would call them and say, hey, I got squirrels. And then they'd be like, we can try to get those out for you. And so I was kind of that guy. And looking back, I had an idea of how to get squirrels out, but I didn't really fully know what I was doing. And then I went to work for I guess I'd describe it as a medium-sized wildlife-only company in Columbia, South Carolina. And that's where I kind of met my good friend Jason, who was my boss at the time. And he really helped me put it all together as far as exclusion and pricing and dealing with customers and all that kind of stuff. And then we ended up moving up to North Carolina for my wife's job, and the rest is history.
Gotcha. So sounds like you had a pretty good, I guess, foundation of somebody that actually, you were able to learn from and kind of learn the ropes, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I trapped. I did like beaver trapping and stuff like that in college, kind of for fun and to help out some of my professors on some of the public lands up there around Clemson, on the Clemson experimental forest and stuff. And then I was able to get a good customer service background. But yeah, working under somebody who actually had been in business for 20 years and knew how to operate a wildlife damage control business was essential for me, just to be able to put it all together and really learn how to get critters out of people's houses, which is really what my business focuses on.
Now, you say your business focuses on getting critters out versus exclusion, or versus?
Oh no, I mean, I do both. I mean, we get them out and seal up everything and give everybody a long-term guarantee, make sure they don't have any issues in the future. But I just do that as opposed to, I really steer clear of predator control, beaver trapping, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So how do you work primarily in Durham, right there around where you're at? I guess that's Raleigh, Durham. So it's a pretty popular area. Is that?
Oh right? Yeah. I mean, Raleigh, Durham. I'm in Durham, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. I mean, I think that they say there's about 3 million people in the combined area. As I've gotten a little further along here, almost 3 years into the business, I don't travel as far from the house as I used to. I think when you're starting out, you really got to be willing to drive. Sometimes I would drive an hour and a half if I had to get to one of these smaller towns and get bats out of somebody's house, because a lot of times they can't get people out there. So I would do stuff like that. Now, as I'm busier, time is kind of my limiting factor. So I really try to stay within 15 miles of the house. And luckily, I'm in an area where there's plenty of people and plenty of business to do that.
Man, that's pretty awesome to be able to stay within 15 miles.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. I do just about everything I can to not drive more than 30 minutes.
Nice. So you said, you slapped some signs on your truck and then waited for the calls to pour in. We know how that goes. So how did you start to generate calls? That's one of the things that I've run into. I had this. I got a real similar background to you. I got into trapping, and through getting into trapping, kind of met some other trappers, and they operated their own businesses, and I always thought that would be just the absolute best thing in the world. And so I would always kind of pick their brains a little bit and try to figure out where they got how they got customers, and most of them said word of mouth, and that was basically told me nothing, because if I'm new to it, there's no word of mouth to begin with, so I really hated hearing that.
Right.
So how did you go from 2017 signs on your truck, waiting on the phone to ring, to full time busy and keeping things going?
Well, like I said, I really did just slap some magnets on my truck and just waited for calls. And I still remember my first customer. She called me. She was sitting behind me in traffic and called me, said she had mice. And I said, I can seal up your whole house and you won't have any mice. And I was so excited. But I think by early 2018, I think it'd been maybe like 5 months or so. And I realized, like, I got to do something. Like, I would do like somebody, at my wife's work or something like that. I would work on their house, but that was like pretty much it. So I used Google AdWords really to get started. That was pretty essential, especially when we moved here. We didn't have any family in the area, no friends. We didn't know anybody, and so I didn't have those connections and that network. So started using Google AdWords. I really had no money at the time. I was really a budget operation. I was working at a restaurant 4 or 5 nights a week, waiting tables, and I think I would spend maybe $300 to $400 a month on Google AdWords. I think I did that for maybe 7 or 8 months, and I was really, with every customer I got through that, you get a lot of really bad calls when you do that.
Yeah.
And you make mistakes. Like, I think the first time I did it, like the first week, I must have set my area wrong. I was getting calls from Canada. So, but I got all that sorted out, and I was able to generate some pretty good calls. Unfortunately, I guess like some of the bigger companies buy up I think they buy up all the squirrel work, because I never got any squirrel calls. But I would just, with every customer, when I finished working on their house, I would ask them to please post on the neighborhood listserv, nextdoor.com or whatever. And to me, that's the biggest thing that I've done.
Gotcha.
Is asking people to post in the listserv. I mean, having 100 5-star Google reviews, that's fantastic. And people who find you on Google will look at that and they will like that. But people, especially in the nice neighborhoods, they want to find somebody they can trust, somebody that their neighbors trust. And that stuff spreads like wildfire. I mean, if one lady takes a picture of you picking up a copperhead and putting it in a bucket and post it on the neighborhood listserv, everyone in that neighborhood is going to call you when they have a wildlife issue. So I think that was definitely the biggest thing for me. It still is. I still ask my customers to do that.
That's good. That's really good. And free.
Yep. 100% free. And I mean, at this point, I really don't spend any money on advertising. I mean, it really is all word of mouth or word of nextdoor.com.
Gotcha. So how do you go about your jobs? When somebody calls you, one of the things that I've been wrestling with, I took a NUCOA wildlife control operators training course. And one of the things they talked about there was, you shouldn't be giving free inspections. And personally, I tried that a couple times recently, and tried to, sell that I was gonna, it would cost for me to come do the inspection, and of course I never got a call back. So I've kind of dropped that. But how do you approach that? Do you give free inspections? Do you charge for that? How does that work?
So I would say most of the time I actually do give free inspections, and sometimes I kind of kick myself for doing it because I did the math on it. If you did 4 inspections a week at $75 a piece, that's over $15,000 a year, just right there. And those things do take time between your drive time. You might have an hour of drive time, an hour with the customer. Say you go home and you write up an email with pictures and put a quote together. I mean, you might have 3 hours invested in it. So, I mean, I definitely see the benefit of charging. I know all the major companies in this area do. I've got friends in the area who also operate kind of one-man operations, and they all do. I will just say I started out definitely doing free inspections, and now I do it based on how busy I am. If I'm having a real slow week, and if I'm having a bad week, then I'm going to chase every lead and I'll drive out there for free and take a look. If I'm busy, then that inspection fee, it's definitely worth it. And it also helps weed out the people who are not going to be willing to spend the money to hire me or to hire you.
Absolutely. That's one thing that I have figured out is, I don't know exactly how to explain it, but it doesn't take long on a phone call, and you can figure out whether somebody's going to be willing to pay or not. And so I've done that. I've done that too, to kind of make sure that it was worth my while. Because if I didn't feel good about somebody really going forward with the job, I'm gonna charge an inspection fee, and then either they don't want me to come, and that's fine because they probably weren't going to pay anyway, or they do want me to come, and at least I get my time accounted for. So
exactly. And I mean, I hope none of my customers are listening to this, but I'll also do it based on things they say to me over the phone. If they mention a handyman, there's going to be an inspection fee. If they mention that they're kind of a DIY kind of person, there's going to be an inspection fee, because then they're just fishing. They're just fishing for information, and I don't have a problem giving them that information, but that information is not free.
Yep, absolutely. So you say most of the companies in your area do charge for inspections?
As far as I'm aware, just about every company. I know the big guys like TruTech and your Critter Controls. I know for a fact they do. And then Like I said, I got a couple friends running small shops. I know they're charging, and then I think even some of kind of the medium-sized companies in this area, I've seen some of their quotes and stuff over time, and they seem to charge an inspection fee too. So maybe I'm doing something wrong.
I don't know. I think around here, and I'm not super plugged in, but one of my big competitors is a pest control company. It's kind of a regional pest control company, I guess, but
Mm-hmm.
they do free estimates, and I know I've bid on jobs, and the person got 3 or 4 estimates. I know they didn't pay 3 or 4 people to give them bids, so
Right. Well,
I don't.
I mean, like I said, everybody's different, and I mean, my mentor in South Carolina, he's been in business a long time, and he does not charge inspection fees, never has. Um, he always tells me the most important thing is just to get yourself in the door. So I think both ways can work.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've taken away. Like I said, I kind of experimented with that and pitched a couple of uh, jobs as there's going to be an inspection fee, and they didn't. I didn't get a call back, and I know I got a lot better chance of selling somebody if I can get in front of them. So that's kind of where I've taken it. And if things take off, and I'm like like you said, kind of super busy and don't really have the time, then that may come into play. Right now,
Right.
I'm willing to take the risk for the job.
This is my dog TR. Sorry.
No, no problem.
Get down, buddy.
So what's what would be your preferred job? And I'm going to say this is from a business and a personal standpoint. When you're thinking about what all the jobs that you do, all the services you offer, what's your go-to so far as what you enjoy to do, and then what's your go-to so far as best for business?
Well, see, I mean, the best for business is squirrels because there's lots of them and they're always getting into attics. They're pretty predictable. They're easy to take care of. But I would say I enjoy bat work the most. It's just detail oriented. Um, they leave a nice mess. Uh, I don't know. I've always really liked bats. I think bats. Also enjoy possums because a lot of times with a possum, gets in the crawl space, you set a trap out, you got the possum out the next day, and then you're making money just crawling around, maybe putting down a new vapor barrier, replacing some insulation. I've always enjoyed possum work as well.
Yeah. So what you emailed me. The way we got in touch is you emailed me wanting the pricing sheet that I put together. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious. Hopefully, if you had a chance to look over it, I should have mentioned this beforehand. But I'm curious how, not to get into specifics, but how that compared to your current way of pricing, and if there was anything that you kind of would do differently or do differently that kind of not necessarily disagreed, but just being different. I'm anxious to hear some other people's perspectives on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that when I plugged in everything into your price sheet, uh, the main thing was that my takeaway was, dang, I need to make a lot more money to get to where I want to be. You don't really realize just how expensive running a business really is, and when you're a one man operation, I think it can be difficult to get your revenue super high. I mean, I feel like I do the best I can, but I mean, I feel like my hourly rate that came in that I got from your spreadsheet is about what I get per hour that I'm actually working, or like per hour that I'm actually at a customer's house. I think I'm getting about that rate. But I think that there's a lot of space in the drive time, in the office work. I don't know if I'm getting that hourly rate a full 40 hours a week.
Right. Yeah, that was one thing. I was thinking on it the other last week that kind of like you said, there's no way me myself alone can get to that point when I plug in where I would like to be. That
Mm-hmm.
one man can't do it, because I mean, you got to be feeling the daily rate or the hourly rate, but then at the same time you've also got to be selling for next week, or so it's a lot to think about. And um, try to figure out how take that first step, I guess, of how do you think about hiring somebody and where does that come into play? That's something I've been kind of really thinking on and pondering on, and I have got no answers at all. But that's one thing after really putting it down. Because one thing that I've struggled with over the even this year is, my revenue is up over last year, but if you're not watching those expenses, man, those expenses will get out of hand really quick.
Oh yeah.
And that's another thing that just really, I don't know. One thing that I realized that you really got to pay attention to and be diligent about making sure you know where your money's going.
Absolutely. I think I'm kind of in the same boat with you as far as I really would like to hire somebody and make that move, but it's a big investment, and it's something I'm going to think it over for a long time and make sure I have everything in order before I make that jump. But yeah, as far as keeping your expenses down, I keep saying, I mean, after 2018, 2019, I mean, I bought so much equipment, and I keep telling myself, I'm good on equipment now, I think, but but it's always tempting to go on Wildlife Control Supplies and buy some $200 Comstock or something like that. So I'm trying to resist that urge, and I'm trying not to buy any traps or anything unless I absolutely need it or can justify it. I mean, if I've got so many squirrel jobs going that I need 30 squirrel traps, then I'll buy 30 squirrel traps, but I'm not going to have them just sitting in the basement.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's man, it's easy because you need a trap for everything, right? From squirrels to armadillos to woodchucks to whatever. So it definitely can get out of hand.
Exactly.
So, do you use any kind of software or apps or anything for tracking your leads and sending estimates and things like that, or is it all just kind of pieced together through Word or things like that?
So, to be honest, I just started tracking all my leads and lead conversions and stuff like that a couple of weeks ago, and I just kind of created my own spreadsheet. I've never really done it. I'm starting to do it. I'm really interested to see, where that data goes, how many leads a month I'm getting, what my conversion rate is, to get a better picture of, hey, what kind of calls am I getting? Are they junk calls, or am I doing mostly squirrel work? Am I getting a lot of bat work? I'm really interested to see all that data, but I have never done it. I don't have it.
That's one thing that being a one-man operation, when you spend all day in the field and get home, the last thing I want to do is sit down and start plugging in all that information. But I think that's something, like you said, that's something I've tried to do, and I've really fallen behind on it. But I keep adding stuff. Like the other day, I added a column for keyword so that I could put specifically squirrel or raccoon, and I'm trying to track it monthly. And hopefully after a year, then I can see a trend of, well, in May the raccoon calls picked up, and in June it was more bats, and for thinking about planning content or ads or whatever, I think that that kind of stuff's really valuable. But man, it just takes the discipline to stick with it and stick with the program.
Yeah, I mean, it can be tough when, like, I had my first appointment at 8:30 this morning. I walked in the door at 7:45. And it's like, then I got to sit down and just type in all the leads and all the phone calls I made today. It's like, I don't know. But
right.
I've never really looked into the software. I have some friends in sales who have told me that I could use something like Salesforce or something like that. I would like to look into that stuff further.
So how do you do your sales process, I guess, for lack of a better word? It sounded like earlier you said, you do the inspection and then you send a follow-up kind of report. Is that how you kind of work things, and your quotes included in the report?
Not always. Obviously, like if I'm doing, like I do work for several different property management companies, so I'm obviously always emailing them. I will even offer customers, I'm like, I can either write something up in the truck right now, or I can email you later. I'll do that. If there's a job where it has some type of exclusion where I'm like, man, I need to get back to the house and like run some numbers and see what my materials cost is going to be before I send them a quote. And I'll tell them I'll have a quote to you within the next 48 hours, something like that. But I do have written contracts like ready to go on the truck that I can write up for most things. But I mean, in general, I mean, my process is I get as much information from the customer as I can over the phone. And then come out, do a thorough inspection inside and out. And then, it's always best to sit down with them and really go over everything you want to do, especially when you're pitching a lot of exclusion work. They really want to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're going to do it, and what your guarantee is going to be, and how long it's going to take. I try to just go over everything with the customer a million times, because if they say yes and I start the work, I always want to set the expectation so they know exactly what to expect so that I don't have any issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think that sitting down with the customer and outlining that, I think is a crucial part. And that's something that I haven't done up until now very good. I'm still trying to work that process out, but being in person, you've got that better opportunity, that you've got the chance to make the sale better, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And that one thing that I feel like I'm lacking, and I've tried to do some studying on, is just the sales process, because I guess maybe it's like every job, but we got into this because we want to like dealing with wildlife, but in reality, you're dealing with people way more than you're dealing with wildlife. And
Right.
Getting comfortable with that is for me, it's taken some learning.
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while as well. I didn't really think of myself as like a people person when I got into this business, but now, I mean, I genuinely love meeting with my customers, chatting with customers. I still don't consider myself a salesman. I'm a critter guy, and I'm going to tell you what it's going to take to get the critters out of your house, and you can take it or leave it. I'm not like a super pushy sales guy. I'm like, this is the deal. I hope that I'm personable and the customer likes me. I'm definitely trying to sell myself more than anything else. But I think that all just comes with experience. The more and more you talk to people, I think it gets better.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that 100%. And I think you're right. Just the being kind of an owner operator and sitting down with somebody, even if you're not talking about specifically what you're gonna do, but just talking to people, and I found out a lot of time I get asked way more than I expected. How did you get into this line of work? And
so common question.
yeah, and that I feel like that's a great sales point without really trying to make it a sales point. Is just kind of explaining, this is what I'm passionate about, and that people seem to like that. I guess is the best thing I can say there, is that I don't know, that seems to go a long way, and I didn't really expect that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you make an impression with somebody, when they ask that question, if they see your genuine enthusiasm for what you do, a lot of times I feel like a light just kind of goes off, and they'll just like you, and you'll just be their critter guy for as long as they own a house in your area. You're their guy, and they'll call you for everything, and they'll tell every friend and family member they have, and that's what word of mouth's all about.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
But I mean, speaking of common questions, how about what's the craziest thing you've ever caught? I'll probably get that one 2 times a week.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to answer it now.
I try to tell people, like, I mean, I've seen crazy stuff, but I don't know if anything that I've ever caught's that crazy. I'm not out here catching any foreign or exotic animals, I mean. But I mean, I've excluded 10,000 bats from a building. I've seen infestations that would blow your mind. But I don't know if I've ever really caught anything that crazy or that exotic. This isn't Florida,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. 10,000 bats. That's pretty stout.
This was it was in a small town in South Carolina, and I think there was a law firm on the first floor, and the second floor had just been vacant for years. And the whole second floor, it wasn't like an attic or anything. The whole second floor was just full of bats. the guano was 2 to 3 feet deep, all over the floor, everywhere. With the worst areas where the bats were really roosted up. I mean, as tall as me. I'm 6 feet tall. That's one of those ones where I wish I wasn't working for somebody else. I'd like to get in on that cleanup.
Yeah, you got that right. So what's your most common issue that you deal with? If you had to pick out one thing that probably you deal with more than any, what would you say that would be?
As far as wildlife goes?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, it's squirrels, hands down. Gray squirrels here in North Carolina are far and away public enemy number one as far as getting into houses, which is, what I focus on. State of North Carolina actually makes us file. We have to have a depredation permit to do any trapping or removing of wildlife. And we have to report those depredation permits to the state every year. And they publish their data, and it's gray squirrels, far and away, number one. Not even close.
What about, do y'all get many flyers up there?
We do, for sure. They keep me pretty busy, especially in the wintertime. It seems to me that they form these like wintering colonies in attics, and there can be quite a good bit of them. But in this time of year, I hadn't had a flyer call in a while.
Yeah.
Not that anyone ever knows that they have flying squirrels until you show up and tell them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Man, those things are, I've always found they seem to be aggravating. I struggle to find their entry holes a lot of times. They can get in some odd places.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people when I do those inspections. I tell them we're going to have to do all of this, because when I do all this work, that's when I'll find the holes. I can't find it in a 45-minute inspection. But if I spend 10 hours working on your house, I will find every entry point. They can be pretty subtle. They're not as destructive. They don't create the chew outs quite like a gray squirrel. But I would always say just check those ridge vents. And if there's like a brick chimney and wood siding, they really like to chew out right on the edge, right on the seam there.
Yeah.
It seems to be like the most common spot. I don't like trapping them because you never know how many are in there. I pulled 17 out of a house one time, and it's like I never really know when to say I'm done trapping.
Right. Yeah, because like I said, a lot of times folks don't hear them, so you can't get a good feed of if they're gone or not.
Or do you live trap those, or are you using snap traps? Or
now in Georgia, we're required to live trap them, and that's where it's really frustrating.
You're required to live trap them, huh?
Yep.
Wow. I'll usually will give them a few days of live trapping, and then I load it up with snap traps.
Yeah, I've set live traps like the Sherman style traps and stuff in the attic, but I've never had any luck baiting them to a trap. The best luck, I mean, the only luck I've ever had is finding their exit and putting a trap right there on the entry point and catching them as they come out.
Really? I have some success with the live traps. It can be kind of tough. I kind of like just using those double door have-a-hearts because they're really, really sensitive.
Yeah.
Those seem pretty good.
Yeah.
But you got to put out like a lot of, I put out like a lot of just blobs of bait just kind of around the attic to really get them moving around the attic. Seems to help out a little bit.
Right. So, trying to look over my sheet here and see. What about any training, or a lot of other industry have like continuing education requirements?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you try to keep up with or do to stay, I guess, abreast of any kind of new techniques or anything like that?
I mean, I definitely am always like reading online and trying to consume as much information as I can. I'd like to take that course like you were talking about. I'd like to do some stuff like that. and I'm actually really interested in trying to do like more bird control. So I'd like to take some of those like bird barrier courses or something of that nature. But really, I mean, the state of North Carolina does require us to have a certification. So I did have to take like a 3-day wildlife damage control agent certification course that was taught by the state. It was really cool. They had biologists and game wardens and everybody talked to us. And then I think they make us take a course every 3 years to maintain your certification. But other than that, I haven't really done a lot of official stuff. But it's something I always say I'm going to do, but I need to carve out more time for it.
Right.
When I'm not working, I like to be hunting or fishing. And it's hard for me to say, oh, this weekend I'm going to sit down on the computer and take an online course.
I'm with you. I'm with you there. So the state offers the training that y'all are required to do, though?
Yeah, they do. And, I probably could have passed the test at the end without sitting through it all, but it was all like very, very interesting. I mean, they went over everything with us and had all kinds of experts. It's actually a really great course. And I came from South Carolina where they didn't make anybody take that kind of thing. And I kind of wish they would, but just make sure that everybody kind of knows what they're doing. South Carolina is kind of weird because I think that if the wildlife's causing any issue within 100 feet of your house, you don't have to have any kind of permit or anything. You can just do whatever.
Right. Yeah. Wild West.
Yep.
So I did notice on one of your Instagram posts, and maybe in a while back, I was trolling you a little bit, but I saw the way you fixed one of the soffit returns with a metal. How do you like working with that? I assume you're using the coil stock. How do you usually try to work with that? What kind of tools and stuff do you use for that?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm dealing with with an eave or like a soffit or like the side of a dormer, a lot of times I'll reinforce those with metal flashing. I mean, I typically will just get the pre-painted white aluminum flashing because most soffits are going to be white. It's going to blend in. So I'll typically will reinforce it with that. I mean, I just use a drill. I usually will get some white screws, just try to just make it all blend in for a customer. I want it to be as aesthetically pleasing as possible. And it'll, the aluminum is a little thin, and if you apply it wrong, if you give a squirrel an edge, they can still chew through that. So make sure you apply it right. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. I just mostly get it at the hardware store, just the rolls of white aluminum flashing.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's one thing that I joined the Nucoa Facebook group, and a couple of those guys they're diehard. A lot of those guys, they talk about the different, metal bending tools and using that coil stock, and I really like that. It looks nice and gives a lot more reassurance. It's definitely something that I picked up and will be using more in the future for sure.
Yeah, I really would like to get one of those metal bending tools because it can be hard to get a good crease on it by hand. It's just not going to bend right. And I have seen some people working with those, and it can give it a much cleaner look a lot of times. So that might be something I might need to invest in.
So speaking of tools, what is your go-to? You take everything else, but I'm keeping this. What's your go-to gotta have tool if you could only pick one?
Oh, I mean that's too easy. It's my DeWalt 20-volt impact.
All right.
I use that thing all day, every day for everything. Yeah, I don't think I could do anything without that.
Gotcha. I tell you one thing that I bought recently that I didn't really think about before, but I'm so glad I did now it's a battery powered finishing nail gun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for installing like drip edge and stuff.
Yeah.
Man, that makes in hardy board especially. Man, that makes the job so much easier.
Man, I'm gonna have to get one of those. Yeah, DeWalt makes one of those. I think that'll fit into my system. But yeah, with that impact, I mean, I use it from everything to like today. I was installing bird guards over some like bathroom exhaust vents, and I had to get the right screws to drill into hardy plank and stuff. But I use impact for that. When I'm doing drip edge, a lot of times I'm gonna use those screws with a neoprene washer. and go through and install the drip edge that way. I mean, I use it for screening and gable vents, for, I mean, you name it. I've got that. I have a holster. I mean, it's holstered to my side pretty much all day when I'm doing exclusion.
Yeah, that it's really nice having those, that, especially that suite of battery powered tools. I mean, it's so easy now. You can carry a skill saw and a chop saw and all that stuff, and you don't have to worry about plugging it in. That is really handy.
Oh yeah, I think one day I was working on a customer's house. To be honest, I think I was working on that picture you're talking about on Instagram. I was actually replacing some of the rotted soffit, and the homeowner wasn't home, and none of their exterior outlets would work, and I couldn't plug my circular saw or my oscillating tool in to make the cuts I needed. And I was just like fed up. I drove to the hardware store and I bought an oscillating tool and a circular saw right then and there, and went back and finished that job. Because that was my day to finish it.
I understand. That's why I just recently got myself rigged up an inverter in my truck, and I got my battery charger running all the time now. I keep a fresh battery on it all the time, so I know I've never got to worry about charging everything up when I get home or anything. So it's pretty handy. Well, Frank, I think we've covered, man, near about everything that I wanted to, everything that I could think of. You got any words of wisdom for somebody that's looking to get in and get started in this industry and make a business, make a name for themselves?
Oh man, I don't know about that. I would just say, if it's all about customer service to me. I mean, just value your customers, treat them right, and they'll treat you right, and you can be successful in this business.
I think that's pretty good words of wisdom there.
That's best I got.
How do people find you if they want to follow you along on social? I know you got Instagram. I think you got Facebook. Tell us where to find you at.
Yeah, I'm mostly on the Instagram. I think it's at Wildman Wildlife Removal. You can give me a follow on there. The website's wildmantrapping.com if you want to check that out. I don't really mess around on Facebook too much. But.
Good enough. One more question. You mentioned early on that you started your business and you created an LLC. I meant to ask you this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Have you changed? Do you wish you would have done something different now that you got a little bit more knowledge? You said that, and it kind of sounded like you would have done it differently. I was just curious. Or have you changed things?
No, I haven't changed it. I still got the LLC. I think just looking back, I was strapped for cash, trying to get the equipment I needed to just get this business off the ground. And I think at the time there was no need for me to spend $300 or $400, which I use like LegalZoom, I think, which was like a lot cheaper than going through an actual attorney. I just don't think I needed to spend the money at the time. I mean, you don't have to do it. I think ultimately LLC is the way to go, but when you're just starting out, you don't have to worry about that. You can just report your income to the IRS as under your own name.
Right. Well, good enough. I know you probably got some leads to enter into your spreadsheet, so I'll give you some time.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you coming and taking some time with us.
No, thanks, Chris. It was good.
Well, best of luck, and man, we'll catch up with you after you hire your next 10 employees, maybe.
All right, that sounds good.